Are we ready?
Yeah. You gotta go over.
This is Carl.
This is Nicole.
And this is Carl
And
Nicole
Nicole
Read the News. Today we're going to be talking about Atlanta, or actually Georgia, and the voter suppression going on there.
The law that was passed by Governor Kemp, cutting back the number of days that the people will have to request an absentee ballot, cutting down the number of ballot boxes that will be available to people. You can't just go to any voting place like we had here in LA County, where we could just go to any voting place. And it will also be a misdemeanor to give food or water to people waiting in long lines. That seems to be the big one.
Now let's keep this in mind. When they talk long lines, we're talking the lines got as long as 11 hours during the last election. That's ridiculous. And really, kudos to the people who waited on that line 11 hours to make their voice heard. They put those people who don't vote to shame.
Absolutely.
And surprise, surprise, most of those lines occur in minority areas, but the Republicans say this has nothing to do with race. So when you make that blatant of an attempt to cut back on people's rights, and let's face it, the only reason this is happening in Georgia is because we turned it blue, and
First time in a generation.
And not only did we turn it blue for the Senate, for the presidential election, we took over both Senate seats. I say we like it's me.
It was personal for many people.
Well, it's blue for you, it's green for me.
Oh, okay. But I think, we as Democrats, we had a lot at stake. I mean, I know that I was watching that race very closely, and that race also happened the day of the insurrection.
Day before,
okay. And so that was watched very closely because of that.
And let's face it, I mean, even as a Green, I'd rather have a Democrat in those seats any day of the week than the Republicans that were in them before. And let's not miss the historical nature of that vote. They elected a black man and a Jewish man in the Deep South. That's change. And that's what the Republicans are scared of.
The black man that was the pastor of the church where Martin Luther King, is that where he worshipped, or?
No, he headed that church.
Oh, he headed that church, okay.
So, historic.
Absolutely. So
if you're gonna go and get revenge and try to disenfranchise voters, there's gonna be some kickback. And surprisingly, Major League Baseball kicked back really quickly and announced this week that the All-Star game is being moved from Atlanta. So good for them. Unfortunately, the Atlanta Braves, the team that plays there, doesn't seem too happy with it. And they released this statement, which Carl and Nicole are going to read. Atlanta Braves press release. The Atlanta Braves are deeply disappointed by the decision of Major League Baseball to move its 2021 All-Star Game. This was neither our decision nor our recommendation, and we are saddened that fans will not be able to see this event in our city.
The Braves organization will continue to stress the importance of equal voting opportunities, and we had hoped our city could use this event as a platform to enhance the discussion. Our city has always been known as a uniter in divided times, and we will miss the opportunity to address issues that are important to our community.
Unfortunately, businesses, employees, and fans in Georgia are the victims of this decision. We will continue to support community legacy projects which have been planned or are in process. Now, the first thing I would note, I don't know if you noticed this, but what's at the top of that press release?
The tomahawk?
Yeah. Something that
I thought they were removing that.
they refuse to.
Why?
Because they don't see it as a problem. Native Americans don't exactly appreciate their tomahawk, or their name for that matter. It's rather demeaning to their culture. And that's not my words. That's, they've been, Native American groups have requested they remove it, but it's there. So kind of sets the tone for this whole press release. Now, part of what this is saying, and I've heard this, even Stacey Abrams has said this, is in terms of boycotting movie production, that you're hurting the workers instead of pushing this decision. I understand that to a point, but those same workers are the ones that are going to be most likely affected. I mean, you go to a stadium, who's usually working the concession stands?
Right.
It's usually minority groups, poor groups, because they usually build those stadiums in poor neighborhoods. Land's cheaper and you can push the people around. Could you see them building a stadium in the middle of Beverly Hills? It would just never happen.
No. Well, I saw Keisha Lance Bottoms on CNN this morning, and she said that she was glad.
Oh, so she was glad.
She was glad that they made a stand. She was sad that it had to be done, but she was glad that they did it. Mm-hmm. Because she knew that it had to be done. But, it was a double-edged sword. That it had to happen, but she was sad that it had to happen.
And there's precedence for this, because when North Carolina passed their anti-trans bill, the bathroom bill, the NBA pulled their All-Star game out. And as soon as the bill was repealed, they gave them the next game. Mm-hmm. So when Georgia decides to stop being discriminatory and stop engaging in voter suppression, they'll get the game back. So I just thought that was interesting. But even more interesting, maybe our former president, he's not allowed on Twitter, so he just releases press releases. And of course, he had a press release for this one. Now, let's preface this by saying that all of this is his fault.
Absolutely.
It's his big lie that is setting the stage for states like Georgia to engage in this behavior, pretending that we had massive fraud in the last election, and the fraud just did not exist. Although I have my own theories on that. You have something to say?
No.
You want to guess on my theory?
No, I don't know.
So, what's the thing that if Trump accuses somebody, what does that usually mean?
That he has some dirt on him?
No, I'm thinking he usually has done it. If he accuses somebody of doing something, that's because he's covering his own butt and he's already engaged in it.
Okay.
The polls before the election were showing Texas to be teetering on possibly going blue.
Okay.
And the same thing with Florida. Two states controlled by laughable Republican governors.
Okay.
I don't know that they didn't mess with the election, because the actual results of the election were nowhere near the polls. So I'll look at the camera. I like to look at you because you're pretty.
Aww.
So, prefacing all this by saying it was his fault. But now, we'll read the news. Baseball is already losing tremendous numbers of fans. Don't know that that's true. I think he's basing that on
they may be losing ticket sales because people can't go to the stadiums because of COVID, but that has nothing to do with, fans are fans. people are still going to watch the games regardless of whether or not they're there.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he may be basing it on TV ratings, but
Okay,
let's face it,
whatever.
that TV ratings are going down for everything.
Exactly.
And now they leave Atlanta with their All-Star game because they are afraid of the radical left.
Here we go again.
The radical left. I guess it's radical to want equal voting rights.
Apparently so. I hope his kid is a Democrat.
You mean Byron?
Barron.
Byron.
Byron. I hope Barron is a Democrat.
Democrats who do not want voter ID. Okay, now this is I've gotten
this
into
is another part of Georgia.
But the people that I've engaged with on Twitter are pretending that this is all about voter ID. And really, there's some parts where it's voter ID, but if I remember correctly, it's voter ID for absentee voting. They want to force people to make copies of their ID and then include it with their ballot. And again, the people who are least likely to have an ID are minority and poor people, and older people.
Right, because they don't drive. So they may only have, like a state ID, like we have California IDs.
If they can get to the...
If they can get there, absolutely.
Now, if we want to give out free IDs, I'm perfectly willing to show an ID to vote.
But it costs money.
But you have to provide those people with an ID. And they don't want to do that because it's just another roadblock.
Right.
Which is desperately needed. Again, there was no fraud in the last election. This is a joke. And if you remember, after 2016, he was claiming there was voter fraud.
And he wasn't even in the 2016 election.
Yes, he was.
Oh. Okay, that was a Nicole's. I'm sorry.
He won in 2016.
Oh, sorry.
Well.
Okay, he shouldn't have won. Okay, he won the electoral college, right, but he didn't win the popular vote.
But do you remember then he put together that voter commission?
No.
Oh, he put together a voter commission. They spent a lot of money.
Maybe I'm saying stupid things because I'm really hot right now.
You're always hot.
No, I'm temperature hot.
And then they disbanded because they didn't find anything. Because there is no massive fraud going on. You okay?
I just made an idiot of myself.
If you're nice to me, I'll edit it out.
No, you won't.
To have anything to do with our elections, Trump said in a statement released by Save America PAC, his latest money-making operation.
Oh, it's my turn to read.
Okay.
Boycott baseball and all of the woke companies that are interfering with free and fair elections. Are you listening, Coke, Delta, and all? He added, referencing other companies that have criticized the new law.
So, he's trying to cancel those companies. I thought the Republicans are against cancel culture. Oh, it's just like political correctness.
Yeah, it's only when it's convenient.
Yeah, don't stand up for the flag, and we'll make sure you don't have a career. But if you want to engage in racial harassment and hate speech, that's okay. And as far as Delta, all Delta did was the CEO condemn the law. That's all he did.
Yeah.
So, and I believe it was Junior wants to have Georgia go after them for that and take away some tax benefits or something, which would be a violation of their First Amendment rights.
Right.
You know, this is the people who complain that getting kicked off of Twitter was a violation of their First Amendment rights.
Thank God.
Which isn't.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Oh well. Okay.
This was Carl.
This is Nicole.
This was Nicole.
Oh.
This was Carl.
This was Nicole.
And this was Carl and
Nicole
Nicole read the news.
You can turn it off.
Oh yeah.